How's it going, everyone? Ish with HYTE here, and today I have with me the THICC Q80 Trio, and we're going to be guiding you through the installation in a HYTE Y70 on both AMD and Intel platforms. So let's open the box, go ahead and get started. Inside the packaging, you will find a rip for thick kind of paper across the top. Once you rip that open, inside you're going to find this. First and foremost, we have the user guide for the THICC Q80 Trio, which we'll put off to the side there. And then you'll also have an accessories package that actually comes with all the mounting hardware, screws, and everything else you'll need to mount and use the cooler. Right next to that accessory pack, you'll find the included LS10 light strip, along with a Type-C to Type-C Nexus Link cable, as well as a few magnetic clips for mounting the light strip to anywhere inside your case. We'll put that off to the side as well. And then last but not least, we've got the absolute behemoth of a cooler, the THICC Q80 Trio. Let's go ahead and set the box aside and take a look at what we're working with. So let's go ahead and take the packaging off of the Q80 itself. Here we slide this off and you're met with the radiator along with the included thick FP12 fans. And then over here we have our actual cold plate that comes with a protective piece laid into it, as well as the ultra slim HD display. So let's take this wrapping off of the tubing and go ahead and expose that. Now from our initial packaging, we're going to take the included LS10 light strips and put those aside, as well as the instruction manual, as we'll be going through this tutorial live rather than through the guided piece of paper. Now, a few things to look out for when you are unboxing the THICC Q80 is there are protective pieces of plastic across each of the three fan hubs in the unibody thick FP12 fan, as well as a protective piece on the H logo, which does have RGB backlighting as well. Additionally, we have a protective cardboard piece over the ultra slim HD display with two flaps that open up from up top. That way you can slide the LCD out of the packaging. And then on the actual cold plate, we have this plastic piece that covers it to protect the thermal paste that is also pre-applied. So just be sure to keep that in mind when you're maneuvering this and taking all of that off before we actually install, which we'll do in just a minute. Inside the accessories pack, we will find mounting kits that are nicely labeled for all the various platforms. Here we have our unified cable harness that will plug into the side of the THICC Q80. We've also got our radiator screws if you need to attach this to the top or side of your case, which we will be doing shortly. We've also got the AMD and Intel spring nuts for mounting this to the actual motherboard. And then, of course, we've got mounting kits for AMD, AM4, and AM5, as well as Intel, and we have a various smattering of sockets that are supported through different types of kits that are inside this Ziploc bag. So let's go ahead and start off by showing you how to first prep your motherboard for the installation of the cooler. Now keep in mind that each kit of mounting comes with standoffs that will need to be installed on the motherboard. Each will have a different set. We have Intel standoffs and AMD AM4 and AM5 standoffs. So for this, we are using a Ryzen 7 9800X3D. In that case, we'll be using the AM5 version of this. So what you first want to do is you actually want to make sure your CPU is securely in the socket. That way you don't risk any damage to your motherboard. Next, what you're going to want to do is take your screwdriver and remove the pre-installed mounting clips that AMD includes on all of the motherboards. These are where these standoffs are going to be going. So just go ahead and quickly take each of these out. Make sure you take the screw out all the way for all four corners. Now what you want to do is take these AM4 and AM5 4 mounting standoffs, rip open the bag, and take all four of them out. We're going to place one in each corner. The gray side faces down, so the screw side is pointing up. So go ahead and slot those in. Slowly use your thumb to gently screw them in place. Try and go diagonal. I mean, this doesn't really matter on AMD as much because there is no backplate that's attached from the rear of the motherboard like you need to do with Intel for mounting. So it makes it a little bit easier, but it's always nice to prep your motherboard ahead of time. So diagonally, they are all set. And now here we are good to go for AM5 in terms of the motherboard prep. Next up, we have Intel. Now, as you can see, Intel already has free holes for all the standoffs, but there's really no screw we can thread it through, which is why for Intel, it's very important that we use the included backplate. Now, this is going to be inside the packaging for the THICC Q80, and this is going to be absolutely necessary on every single Intel motherboard. Now, here's the catch. While you can slide it in from the back ahead of time, and you can get the holes to line up, this actually needs to be done when your motherboard is already in the case, because depending on your motherboard, you might not have clearance or access to this part of the motherboard. So, for Intel, we advise that you install the motherboard in before this process and do all of this inside the case. So let's go ahead and show you how that's done. As you can see, the 4 holes here are where you're going to thread in the standoffs, but first we're going to need to install the backplate. So now that I have the motherboard inside the case for Intel, we're going to take those standoffs out, and as you can see, they look noticeably different from the AMD ones. In the AMD ones, we had that little gray portion at the bottom. For Intel, we have straight aluminum. So, again, same thing here. Short side goes into the motherboard, and the long side sticks up away from the motherboard. So let's go ahead and get this mounting bracket installed behind the motherboard, and I'll show you guys what I mean. Now, you may need to adjust the holes, and the bracket allows you to move it around a little bit inside. So wiggle it around, set up the hole spacing as you need, and make sure it's correct for the platform you are installing into. Once you've got it installed, again, you want to use the diagonal method. That way you secure the back plate into the motherboard without having to do all 4 screws. So you get the top right corner, then you get the bottom left corner. Be extra careful with the components around the motherboard. You don't want to risk damaging anything. Make sure all 4 sections are nice and tight to ensure you get the best contact once you install your THICC Q80. So here we have the Intel mounting, again showing you from the back of the case so it's easier to spot and see, but this actually moves around up and down, side to side. That way you can use the same backplate across a range of different sockets. So what you're going to want to do is slide these around little by little and wiggle them around to make sure they fit in all 4 sections. Now these 2 tabs are adhesive peels. They have pre-applied adhesive on the sides of the mounting bracket. That way they stick to the back of your motherboard, your actual CPU frame, your actual CPU socket. That way this doesn't go anywhere. So for demonstration purposes, we'll be keeping these on, but when you actually install, you want to make sure you peel these off, and as you can see, that adhesive underneath will allow this mounting bracket to stick to the actual back of your CPU socket. So for installation, what do you want to do? As you can see, if you're using LGA 1851, you want these on the outermost position for all 4. And then if you're using 1200 or 1500 or 1115, you can slide them back in. So let's slide these all out since we're using LGA 1851. And then all you want to do is set your first, second, and then the others should just slide into place. And again, those two adhesive strips we mentioned, they'll allow you to keep it attached to both the sides of your CPU socket. So from here on forth, we're going to use the AMD motherboard and the AMD CPU for demonstration purposes. And the installation process from here on out is the exact same for any type of motherboard or socket. So just keep that in mind. The steps up till now were slightly different for AMD and Intel, especially for the standoffs and the backplate, especially for Intel. But now it's all standardized moving forward. What you want to do with your case is make sure you have the side glass, the front glass, and the top panel off. For the top, we want to make sure that you have the fan bracket in the highest position. By default, this is how every single Y70 ships. So unless you've previously used the Y70 and dropped this bracket down further into the case so you can see your fans, that could potentially be an issue. So just make sure before you begin that this top fan bracket is installed in the highest position inside the case before you install the Q80, because the height of the Q80 is going to require that you have this in the highest position. So to get things started, let's go ahead and take the Q80 and gently slide the radiator into the actual chassis. Now to do this, you're going to need to angle it down and inwards, let it come up inside, and then once it's towards the edge, that's when you can straighten it out inside the chassis. So you're going to have to wait till you get to about the corner panel before you can straighten it up and lay it straight flat inside the case. Just because of the length, you're going to need to angle it in and then slide it up. Now, at this point, if you have the HYTE Y70 Touch Infinite, then you're going to have the touchscreen here, which means it's going to be slightly thicker. It's going to go into the case a little bit more, so you're going to have to be slightly more careful about how you slide your Q80 in. And then specifically for the Touch Infinite, you're going to have a few cables that run from the touchscreen up into the chassis. So you're going to want to use your hand and tuck those cables up and far away into the chassis as much as possible. That way the Q80 can easily slide into place. Before we actually do anything with the Q80, we're going to want to install this unified cable harness into the side of the unit and route these cables to the back of the case, because this is the easiest step where you'll have full access to the side of the Q80. If you do this installation and connect these cables after you've screwed it in, it's going to be slightly more difficult for you. So let's go ahead and plug this into the Q80 before we actually secure it to the side of the case. So what we're going to want to do is take this cable harness and plug this into the side of the THICC Q80. So let's go ahead and plug this straight into the side of the Q80. You'll hear a click when it's securely in place, right? You should be able to tug on it lightly, it won't come out. Just make sure it's securely in place. And then before we slide it in, let's go ahead and route these cables to the back of the case. So we'll pull these through to the back of the case. And all we want to do is pull them through to the side here first. And then we can neatly route each one of these through this top hole in the back of the Y70. This will allow us to take all the cables and route them seamlessly and cleanly to the back of the case. So we've got our USB connector, then we'll do our PWM header, and then lastly, we'll do our 6-pin PCIe cable. Again, all through the top hole in the Y70. So once you have all three, now you should be able to cleanly pull the Q80 back into the case and line it up right here, like so. Then we're going to take the radiator screws that were inside our AM5 mounting kit, rip that open, and then secure the radiator to the side of the case. So let's go ahead and do that right now. The easiest is always going to be the bottom. That way you can align the radiator at the very bottom of the case. So let's lightly screw it in at first. Don't screw it in all the way. That way you get a little wiggle room so you're not locking yourself into one angle. And then we want to do the opposite end of the radiator. That way you get some symmetry and you can line it up straight. Again, don't go all the way. Make sure there's enough wiggle room in play. That way you can adjust as needed later. Then we'll secure the other bottom. And then the remaining top. Now that all four are in, you can feel free to fill in the ones in the middle. For demonstration purposes, we're only going to do the four corners, and we'll make sure to screw it in all the way and tighten it up, because now we are sure about the placement There we are. Again, for demonstration purposes for this tutorial, we're not going to be installing the remaining 8 holes, but for you at home, I definitely recommend you install all of the screws. That way it's securely in place. In case this is not on the side of your Y70, maybe you're using another case and top mounting it, definitely want those additional screws and reinforcement points so that it's fully secure inside of your chassis. And then on the ends of the cable harness, just so we can clearly see, you're going to have 3 types of cables. The first is going to be your 6-pin PCIe power. This is what's actually going to power the Q80 and allow it to run all the connections, run the fans, the radiator pumps, everything, right? So you need to make sure this is connected to a 6-pin PCIe to your power supply. Next up, we have our USB 2.0 header. This is actually what's going to establish a USB connection to your motherboard and allow you to pass data to the actual Q80, which will be used to program the LCD, the actual curves, the fan speeds, and control all of that and communicate with the actual unit. And so you want to make sure this is connected directly to your motherboard or a powered USB hub. Please do not plug this into any standard USB splitter or non-powered USB hub because that could potentially lead to some issues. So if you need one, we do actually have one ourselves. We do have our own powered USB hub. So feel free to check that out on HYTE.com. But if you already have one or if you have an available port on your motherboard, this will plug right into there. And then the third cable we have is our PWM cable. And this is going to plug into your CPU fan header on your motherboard or your AIO pump header. Either one works, but ideally you want to use the CPU fan because that's the first one the motherboard's going to check. And then a lot of motherboards will complain if you haven't connected this to the CPU fan. So you have to go into your BIOS and set it to ignore. So to kind of avoid all that extra steps and details, just plug this straight into your CPU fan header and you'll be all good to go. Now, at this point of the installation phase, it's actually up to you how you want to install, whether or not you want to keep the cardboard packaging on the LCD on or off to protect it. If you have other components inside, such as your GPU, and you've already installed your luxury riser, your hypervisor into the actual motherboard slot, it might make it a little difficult to slide this cardboard box out once it's installed. So typically I do recommend removing this cardboard box at this point in time. Because you already have your motherboard in and everything else ready, you can kind of slide that off. And then in terms of the plastic protective peel, again, I would keep it on till the very end, but also for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to take it off. That way you guys can see it clearly. And then the next step is actually removing this plastic protective piece. And as you can see, we already have pre-applied thermal paste. Now, we have used this kind of before, this specific unit, which is why it's not completely clean and even, but on a fresh Q80, you'll see nice even dots of thermal paste laid out across the cold plate. So the final step here is, at least for AM5, you want to slide this bracket off because Q80 actually ships pre-installed with a bracket for Intel sockets. So you want to make sure to take this off if you're installing on AM5. If you're installing on Intel, go ahead and keep this on because this is going to support the latest sockets that you would have been using with the THICC Q80. So in this case, we're going to take this off. And then you remember the accessory pack and the AM4, AM5 installation kit we had? We have this bracket inside, which is for AMD, AM4, AM5. What you're going to want to do is slide it onto the actual Q80. Now, as you can see, there's slots on 3 sides of the actual cold plate. This means you can only slide this in one way. That way, align it with the holes, slide it in, and voila. We now have the mounting brackets for AM4 and AM5 installed on the Q80. So let's go ahead. All you want to do is gently slide this into place over the 4 holes and align all of the holes on the mounting bracket with the actual standoffs that we put in earlier. As you can see, on all 4 sides, we have the mounting bracket cleanly in place with the standoff sticking out. So kind of just let it rest there. Next, we're going to take the 4 spring nuts that came in the packaging, take those out. And now we're going to use these with the THICC Q80 to secure the actual cold plate and ultra slim 5-inch LCD display onto the cooler. Now for this step, again, you're going to want to go the diagonal method. It might be a little difficult, but try and get enough pressure on the spring nut just to kind of get it to hold and connect. We'll do the bottom left first. We'll do the bottom right first. Then we'll go to the top left. Again, just slightly giving the spring nuts enough tension to thread into place. And then we'll do the bottom left. Again, same concept. Lightly at first, screw it in just a little bit. And then finally, the last corner. Same concept. Lightly thread it in with your thumb. Once you feel it catching, now we can take our screwdriver, and again, still want to do the diagonal method. So we'll start with the top left corner here, screw it in a little bit, then switch to the bottom right corner, screw it in a little bit, then we'll go to the bottom left, screw it in a little bit, top right, screw it in a little bit, and just kind of keep the same pattern going over and over until you fully secure and lock the Q80 onto the CPU. And then once you feel it tighten up, give it one last good screw in on each section. You don't want to over tighten this, right, and risk any damage to your pins on the motherboard socket. So just keep going until you feel a good wall of resistance and you feel like the screw is fully threaded and securely in place. Then go ahead and angle your LCD. Keep in mind when installing, the tubes need to be at the bottom and the hinge needs to be at the top. This has to happen because our software and the LCD is only programmed to support this orientation. If you flip it upside down at this point in time, everything is going to be upside down. So make sure the hinge is on the top and then the tubes are coming out from the bottom. All we have left now to do is connect the 3 different cables. We've got the 6-pin PCIe power that needs to connect to your power supply. We've got the USB 2.0 header, which needs to connect directly to a header on your motherboard or through a powered USB hub. And then we have the PWM fan header, which connects to your CPU fan header on your motherboard. Last step before you power on, make sure you take the protective film off your LCD like we did earlier, and then make sure to remove these plastic protections on the 3 fan hubs on the THICC FB12 fan, as well as the final piece that's sitting on the HYTE logo at the top of the radiator.